Smoove, welcome to the show. Good morning.
Hello. Nice to be here.
We're having some slight technical glitches, but we're going to hammer it out in the northeast, and we're going to, this is why we need, what do they call it? The industrial northern powerhouse or something. We all need better broadband.
we do. Like it's, I've always said this, that we're so, well, not just the north. I just think England in general, what we want and what we demand for the internet is, it's just nowhere near what people. And obviously, Virgin and people like that will say, oh, well, yeah, but you can spend another £150 and then you get like slightly better broadband than anyone else. It's a bit like a Tory way of thinking. It's like sitting first class on a train and having that free sandwich. You know what I mean? It's bollocks, isn't it?
I like how we've gone fucking political straight around. We're fucking buzzing about this. I can tell this is going to be a belter. It's nice to have one in the northeast. I've been a big fan of yours for years, so it's going to be really interesting getting into your story. But yeah, I want to take you back, just through because it's interesting to get a different perspective on things. And obviously, we're going to talk about your DJ life, but obviously you have this huge part of your life, which is live performance. How have the last 9 months played out for you?
It's okay, actually. I think everybody went through that, like, oh my God, my life's over moment, like anxiety, watching the news, feeling worse and worse and worse. And then I just stopped watching the news, and it's a state of mind. I mean, I work from home anyway. I think it was because my son and my wife were here all the time that it sort of changed the world a little bit. I mean, there was something said on the radio, I heard that like it was the equivalent of seeing a partner for 8 years in this lockdown. That's insane. How little time you must spend with them. You know what I mean? And then I just kind of cracked on, and we had the album coming out. It was already made. Record label said, "Do you want to delay it?" I was, "Nah, let's get it out." And we made some videos. We managed to get some content out, and that we'd already recorded. So everything sort of was all right. We do a radio station, so that's been quite good having that going every week as well. I think what people miss, like, so to speak, is just like some kind of normalization, like where you can just, oh yeah, on Tuesday I've got to go there and do this, and I don't go to the gym or anything like that, but I can now see why that was so valuable to some people. To have that taken away from them is just like, well, what the hell am I going to do? Do you know what I mean?
It feels like we're going to do this slightly in reverse, but I want to talk about it because it's super important to me as an artist who releases music. So how did you find the process of releasing that album within lockdown? Because for me, and this is why I want to get your perspective on it, for me, I've struggled with releasing music this year because I feel like music takes life in moments, on dance floors, on terraces, as the sun's coming up, as the sun's going down, doing things that you shouldn't be, being with people who you want to be with. Like, that's where music to me creates emotion and memory. And that's why hits become hits. And that's why, it's that, like, if a tree falls in a forest and no one hears it, did it make a sound? And it's like, if that hit record that was released, whatever summer was released this summer, well, it wouldn't have been, because that's the way the music industry works. So I'm just interested in your experience of how that album, when was it released, first of all? Like, rep it, like, shout it out, make sure people go and check it out. But how was that experience different this year than it has been in the past for albums?
Well, when you finish an album, generally it takes 6 months to get it in the machine, as they say, like into the press, and then the press and plant, and then all the media and all that. So it's kind of like you finish it and you go, yes, and then you go, oh, now I've got to wait for all this to see what the reaction is going to be. And obviously this album was not radically different, but it was different from our previous albums. And so it was weird. Like I said, the record label said, oh, do you want to stall it? And I was like, well, what's the point? We've already like put the schedule in. It's not going to make no difference. So they went, oh no, I just thought we'd ask. And it was really exciting because we'd managed to put a video together, a couple of videos actually, like a lyric video, which was an animation from a company that helped us work with it called Craven. So all of these little things like make a big picture. When you're trying to like release something, you need content, you need something else, you need a spin on it. You can't just put the music out there and go, everyone buy it. I mean, we're really lucky that we've got a fan base, whereas a lot of bands, up and coming bands, especially in the Northeast, they haven't even got on that ladder yet. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like, we've sort of survived from our fans, like, because they want to see us, they want to buy the goods. So I think that's why the album went number one. It was like everyone was so desperate, like for something that they all just jumped on this album. And initially when the album came out, it was a shock to the record label. They were like, well, they didn't hear the full album actually. To be fair, they only heard 3 or 4 songs, which I don't like doing because I believe it's like, would you read like 4 pages out of a book? You know what I mean? You need to get the book, you know what I mean, and read it from beginning to end, because that's what an album is supposed to be. I'm talking about vinyl, really. I mean, that's what I always think, that the whole project, every time we do them, it's always vinyl. It's always that full length, long player, you know?
Yeah.
And the record company sort of freaked out, went, whoa, this is going to alienate your fans. Do you not think? And I was like, well, if it does, it does, but we've already made it now. If it does, the damage is done, but let's just see. And it actually went the other way, where it's probably gone down as the greatest album that we've made.
Amazing.
So, and it went number 1.
Well, I think, I mean, there's a couple of interesting things that raises to me, which is, that's great. You know, I love your mindset on it. I also love your mindset about the long player and the vinyl, and that's the experience of the album, and that's how it should be listened to. It's interesting because I think your album would have done phenomenally well, even if there hadn't been a pandemic. But it's also interesting because a lot of artists will have chosen to withhold stuff and will have chosen to, you know, not release an album and everything else. So it's also, it cuts both ways, because as you previously mentioned, there's some emerging artists on there, whether they be DJs, whether they be bands, whether, you know, be producers, whatever, that haven't got enough fans and haven't got enough traction within the industry, as it were, to make things happen in this pandemic, because they haven't had enough. But there are also huge artists out there who've decided to hold things back. So it's created a really interesting lane for people potentially like yourselves to go out there and to succeed, because there's a vacuum of music that people want and demand. So when you put something into there, people devour it because it's exciting. It's something, it's giving some people some happiness and some hope and some emotion in some pretty dire times. So I think it's really interesting that's how it's gone down for you. So it's been a positive experience.
Well, like I think it came out in June, if I remember rightly. But I was listening to Six Music the other day, and the Doves were on, and they were getting interviewed, and they've got a new album that's just come out. And apparently they finished ages ago. But I think the record company or the band decided to do that thing, let's not release it because it's like freaky times. But these freaky times aren't going away, do you know what I mean? It's like, so they've eventually just gone, you know what, let's release it. But I think they were messing on with the master, and that was their excuse anyway. But like, actually, the stuff I heard, I was blown away. I was like, this is amazing. So yeah. But
what's your thoughts on that as far as the kind of the live thing? So obviously, it's been a success, right? Obviously, it is, as an album, it is a success. But do you feel anything's been lost by not being out there touring it? Do you feel like anything has changed within the way that people have, you know, I mean, like I say, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, because you've said it's a success and it's been viewed as such by the fans. But have you missed? Well, it's a stupid question. Obviously, you've missed it. But how has it been without touring it? How has it been without being out there in front of people?
Well, it's two things really. It's like we tour hard. We always do. We have done for 10 years. Like I think so far, like the last count, it was just over 100 gigs that we've lost already, since the first thing actually kicked off. So it's just like, and financially it's a blow, but it's kind of like, you know, like I said earlier, we're lucky that we've got the fans to support us, and we've got, like, you know, people buying products. So the touring is only one aspect of what we do, you know, like, whereas for some bands it's like it's the 50 quid in the pocket that they need every single week that's gone. Yeah. So like, yeah, that was a blow that we lost all the tour that I'd worked so hard on, joining all the dots and, you know, making it happen. But it was more we'd made a dance album. Well, it was our version of a dance album. We'd put more dance music into it rather than, you know, I hate that term dance music, but it is just called dance. So it was a dance album, but we have never, like, really seen anyone lose their mind to it in a club, or even heard it, as, because you've got like the way it's produced and the way that it's made in the studio, and mixed is to sound like what it sounds like, but the live experience is never going to sound like that. Obviously, we had that in mind when we were sort of recording it. We could think, oh yeah, because we were using like synth effects through the bass and stuff. We're like, oh, that's great, we can do that live, like where you're actually playing the bass. So that was all in mind, but we've never really had a chance to show people like how we can do it live, although we have done some streaming stuff. But the dance original album that we recorded in the studio has never been felt in the club. And we've, like, you know, those sonics and seeing people in a club atmosphere just lose their marbles, like in dancing. And that's what dancing's for. It's you're forgetting your troubles and you're getting high off music, you know. So it's a real shame that hasn't happened. And I don't know, will people still be bothered about the album when the clubs finally are open?
If they ever are. Yeah, of course they will. I mean? They'll be dying to come and hear it live and lose their shit. Right, yeah, I'm sure we'll come back to the Smoove Turrell project, but I'm gonna take you back, as was the format of this podcast too. I mean, I became aware of you as a DJ, and you know, and I always kind of, when I first started to see you, was always blown away by the skills and the techniques and stuff. So we're gonna focus on that a little bit, and then move throughout your career. But I want to take you right back, way before DJing, way before everything else, right to your kind of childhood, and I want to get those first musical influences. Like as a child, who's playing the music? What are you hearing? What are those really early musical influences in your life?
There's like three main elements. Like obviously my dad had records, and he used to play records like when I was titchy, and it was always 4 o'clock in the morning, really loud, and it was mainly on the rock side of things, but not rock music. You know, you like Hendrix, you like the Animals, you like them, Van Morrison, Cat Stevens, Nina Simone, Ray Charles, like really eclectic, but like it didn't really do anything for me. Do you know what I mean? I didn't really get it, you know what I mean? The thing that got me first was like electronic, well, kind of boogie, that kind of music, like that late disco boogie elements in electro, that series that came from Street Sounds, and going to Woolworths Records and buying these Street Sounds compilations that were all boogie and funk. And then just after that, it was like electro hit, and it was like, wow, this is amazing. So I got into breakdance because of Beat Street the movie and Breakdance the movie, which was terrible, but it's all we had. So it was like, you know, it was like, it was such a good time as a kid. I was like into dancing. That's what got me into music, and I got into rhythm, and I think that's the power of the drums. But I very quickly discovered cut and paste music. That was like a total love. I was like fascinated by it, you know, like stuff like Dynamix 2 and Mars, Cold Cut, people like that. They were like later on, but there was a lot of early stuff that I really got into, and it was like, this is amazing. You can make music like this by chopping music up. So all I had in the bedroom was like my sister's hi-fi wired up to my dad's secondhand hi-fi, and then I'd made this sort of custom mixer where I used the balance as a crossfader, like to scratch really badly, and then I'd made a switch where you normally put the headphone in and you press the headphone on, but I'd put something round the switch that kind of half turned the switch off, and I used that to transform scratching. That's how I learned to scratch. It was amazing. Insane. It was insane. I was about 12 at this age. This is 1981, and then I very quickly discovered that I could do pause mixing. I don't know how I'd heard of it, but I just did. And so pause mixing is when you use a cassette, and actually I think I've still got the original machine here. Where is it? It's definitely here. I'll see if I can find it in a sec. But like basically you press play and record, and you hold the pause down, and you catch the beat. So you have to catch it right on, and you don't move it until you change the record again, and then you catch it. So it could be like the kick drum, could be just, and then you've got that bit, and then you get another record, you put it on, and you catch the snare drum, and then off, and then the next bit, and the next bit, and it's like really intricate. Anyway, a few years later, I went to college, and I showed these guys who were like skateboard nerds, and they were like crazy guys, and they're all into like graffiti art as well, because that was the thing. Getting into hip hop culture, it was everything. It was like human beatboxing, rapping, scratching. I did all of them, and none of them any good really. Like, you know, never mastered any of them, but it was the fact that I could do all of them that was more interesting to me, you know. So yeah, and I played this pause mix to my friends, and they really inspired me. They were like, "That's amazing! Like, you should release that." And then I'd start getting these ideas of like, wow. So I sent them into radio stations, never got any replies.
Classic.
But it didn't stop me. It was just, how can I release a record? That was the thing. How can I make a record out of other people's records, sampling? In other words, that's where it all really began. To answer your long question.
No, that's wicked. I want to take you, because I'm interested in parts of that journey. So we're going to go back a little bit. Can you remember? Because it's always a favorite question of mine, and I think it's interesting. especially with like people of our generation-ish, because as younger people won't have the same answers in 10 years' time. But can you remember the first bit of music that was yours, whether it was given to you or whether you bought it with your own money, but you held it? Do you know what I mean? Whether it was a piece of vinyl, whether it was a cassette tape. Can you remember that first piece of music that was yours?
The first, well, I've got three really, and one of them's really bad. The first album we got was actually, we went to a record shop in Sunderland, and my sister was she was a year older than me. She did every lesson. Do you know what I mean? She went ballet, she went tap. Well, she wasn't allowed to go to tap. That was one thing she wasn't allowed to do. But she did everything, and like, you know, kind of did it for a bit and then moved on to something else, like quite a lot of kids do. And my mom just, yes, let's go to the next one. And I remember going to the record shop. She was doing disco lessons, right? Disco dancing lessons. And, you know, bearing in mind, this is like 1978, you know what I mean? So it was a long time ago. And I remember standing there being really young, looking up the counter and being fascinated by all the records around the walls. And my mom saying to the guy behind the desk, what can I give my daughter? She's doing disco lessons, like disco dancing lessons. And he went, oh, you want this? And he must have been a cool kid. And he just sold her this album. And I was like, wow, look at that artwork. That's amazing. They got it home, they put it on, and my sister just went, I don't like it. Because back then, you never had listening booths, and they didn't play your music in shops, you know what I mean? It was a weird thing. So they got home, and my sister went, it's crap, that. What's this shit? And just walked away, and my mum went, oh, and I went, that's amazing, I'll have it. So that was really the first album I ever got, well, that I didn't get, but I got. And it was Funkadelic, wow. And it was One Nation Under a Groove. And you know the artwork, it's got like the felt tip drawn of the naked lady with all the squirm coming out of her. It's just psychedelic. Amazing. So like for like a 7-year-old kid to have that must have been pretty weird. The first 7-inch I got was my birthday, and it was Set a Corner Feel For You. I was obsessed with that record. Wow. I still am. And I went to a record shop and I bought in the cheap bin because I didn't have much money, but I used to go to Charts Records in Sunderland. And I used to always shop in the cheap bin, but the first 12 I bought was Stephen Tintin Duff Me, Kiss Me With Your Mouth, because I'd heard it on the radio and I loved it. But it was like 10p or something because no one wanted it.
It's a couple of points because we've talked about on the podcast before, which is how fucking bizarre is it that you used to buy music that you couldn't listen to? Do you know what I mean? Like people now would just be like, kids now would be like, what the fuck? You went into a record shop and just bought something you'd never heard before. That's insane.
Yeah, it is. It is.
And then
there's the doorbell.
Right, yeah, I'll make it. I'll make it. No, go. I'll leave the call on. So
yeah, this is a normal day in Smoove's house. It's always just loads and loads of records.
So are they all stuff that you
delivered every day?
Are they all stuff that? So Smooves just had a delivery. Are they all stuff that you've bought, or are there some of those promos, or what's kind of in that pile? Do you think? I guess
bits of both. I do get sent stuff still, and I buy a lot as well, and I've got too many. I've actually run out of space. I have to sell some.
Yeah, so because we'll come on to that. So obviously they were the first records that you got. Yeah, and you've touched on so many. Like obviously we could talk about so much stuff for so long, but I have to kind of try and keep it interlinear to some sort of story. But like you're obviously talking about dancing. You know, you're obviously talking about the graffiti. You're obviously talking about the kind of the so many facets that there were the beatboxing. Did you quite quickly become like a record collector, like a music collector? Was that something that has been in you from a really early age?
I think initially I was kind of more fascinated by the turntable itself, how it revolved. I remember putting lights on it and watching the lights going around, you know, like that. There was something, that physical thing was like, wow. And then I think once I'd got like, so
where did you first see it? This is another question which I should have maybe asked instead of. So when was the first time that you saw turntables? When was the first time that you saw someone DJing on them? When was the first time you got a chance to touch them and play with them?
I never did. Like me dad had a turntable, and I used to, I wasn't allowed to touch it really, but even though I did, but I've got another story about that later on. It's really funny. I might as well tell it now. Years later, my dad had a record player, which I've still got now, and he died years ago. But I've got this record player, and it's this big white turntable. It's really nice. It's got this variable speed on where you can lift it up and move it up and down. So obviously that was a big thing because it was like, oh, you can beat match with that rather than have to push it round. But I had another setup upstairs when I used to live with my dad, like this is years ago, and I ran downstairs, put a record on, ran upstairs, and then stood on the stairway trying to mix, like running up and down. to slow down and speed one up, like to get them to beat match. That, you know, like that was that. And I used to bring my friends around and go, watch this. And they'd be like, what are you doing? What are you doing? So yeah, anyway, fascinated by a turntable. And it was, I think I was about 12 or something when I literally had about that many records. And it was like, I used to like move the order of them around, but I used to stay in my room a lot and draw. I was fascinated like with art and like graffiti art and drawing. So having music on with me ghetto blaster, listening to the radio, like, you know, it was like, what's he called again? Robbie Vincent on, yeah. And then there was Ian Hughes, was he called Ian Hughes, was on Metro Radio, and he used to do a soul show. And ironically, he's now a good friend, but he's like a fan of our band. And like, so when I met him, it was like a fan off. I'm like, no, I'm a fan of you. No, I'm a fan of you. So, anyway, I'm slightly digressing, but yeah, it was that having that many records, and then suddenly I wanted more. I wanted like a big collection, and I don't know where that came from. I think it must be in people, not necessarily to collect records. I think it's just a collecting nature. Do you know what I mean? Like hoarding. Basically, let's face it, that's what it is.
It's interesting. I've found it interesting over these 9 months that I found it interesting that I still want to collect music, even though I've got nowhere to play it, if that makes sense. Like for me, it's like a house music thing. But even though there's new records coming out, and I still so many times I'm just in here sat in my studio and I turn it up and I'm like, fuck, I wish I was going out this weekend to play that in digital, or do you know what I mean? Or whatever. Like I wish I could go and fucking hear that sub like reverberating and see people, like you said before, losing it to
losing shit, yeah.
And I've been really surprised at how many people. Even I've had a couple of releases over the summer and stuff, and how many people have messaged me from around the world going, oh, I just got your new track on Report, I fucking love it. And it seems mad to me because to me, that music feels like it's just made for a nightclub. So it's almost like, what's the point of it if it's not in a nightclub? And the only reason I might listen to it, I think this is what I thought before the pandemic. The only reason I listen to stuff like not in a nightclub is because I heard it in a nightclub and I want to remember how good it sounded and like the emotion. So I've still been really surprised how much people want to collect music over this time when potentially they haven't got the chance to DJ it out. But like you said, I think it's maybe something that's just innate in us that wants to collect new music and have it and sort it. Do you know what I mean? Because even though, you know, I know I can see all your vinyl and I'm sure you've got a way of sorting it, but even in a digital...
No, it's horrendous.
But even in a digital world, I still feel that need to like get it and put it into the playlist of which I think I'll use it in, do you know what I mean? In sets in times to come. And like, yeah, it's mad.
I think it's that, you know, like on the radio, like I do every week, I do like, there's a section where I do like a half an hour mix at the very beginning. And it's like, generally speaking, it's more on the disco, modern, new disco it's called, and like a little bit of techno or a little bit of house, mainly on the disco thing. And I really look forward to that. And I sort of like, that's what's sort of stirring me at the moment. So it's great. And then you've got the weird section in the middle, and John plays his box. You know, it can be anything. You know what I mean? It's all over the place. It's such an eclectic show. So I like that because that's, as you say, it gives you an outlet for like sharing music, or rather than just collecting music and then not playing it to anybody. Like, what's the point? You know what I mean? Yeah. So I can see your point. But I also go through fads, like not music fads, like format fads, which is really strange. Like I over the last 7 years, all I've done is rebuy everything on 7-inch, which is insane. I've already got a lot of 7-inches. They're all on the back wall there. And there's a load on the floor down here. I'll just quickly show you this. Look.
Amazing.
There's loads of 7s. So I've got this thing about 7s, and I've had it for a long time, but I've just been, I'd love to get that in 7. So I've got like pretty much like nailed all the 7s I want. But it's still releasing new 7s. But then I've kind of fell back in love with 12 inches. You know what I mean? So maybe next year I'll be falling in love with albums again. Do you know what I mean? Or compilations.
So obviously, I'll take you forward from you running up and downstairs to mix. When's the first time that you remember seeing someone actually DJing on like not different levels of a house, 2 decks next to each other with a mixer? Can you remember the first time you physically saw someone doing that?
Not in real world. It was on telly. Right. On the TV, and I was like, wow, I think there was something on Esther Ranson on That's Life or something like that. Yeah, that there was someone doing robotics, and that's the first thing I learned. I was like, wow. And I think Street Dance, the song, I was like massively into that. But a few years after was Paid in Full, Eric B. and Rakim, when they were on Top of the Pops, I was just blown away. I was like, what they're doing with the turntables, like, and Mars, remember Mars?
Yeah.
Pump Up the Volume. There was just the two of them, like, on the turntables. You know, they were miming, but for me, I was like, they're doing something that I need to get into, like, and you know, it's so blurry because it was so long ago, but I can't really remember the definitive moment to answer your question. But I remember the first time I ever beat matched. Obviously, it wasn't on my dad's thing. I had a cassette and I was playing the cassette and I pushed the record round. And I remember being over the moon that I get it in for about 6 seconds in time. I was like, oh, wow, that's it. And then I was hooked. I was just like, I got to get some decks. And I remember Technics, you couldn't just go out and buy a pair of Technics because they were like stupid money and still are.
Yeah.
You know, and so I'd photocopied the logo so big that it was on each sheet, like each letter. So it was right across the room like that. And I'd coloured them all in and it was like, this is how shit it was. And I was just like, God, one day I'll have some of them. And this went on for years and years and years. And everybody kept saying, why haven't you got some decks? Because I can't afford them. And I think it wasn't until I got my first record deal, I was like 19, that I actually got one deck. I got one deck and I was signed to Big Life Records. And it was like, that's how long it took. And then I had to start learning because I'd been using these crap turntables. And actually, the first time I ever used a turntable, a Technics proper turntable, was in Chambers nightclub. And I remember trying to mix and pulling the pitch fade, like, to speed it up the wrong way. I was pulling it towards me to slow it down and pushing it away to speed it up. Mixes were all over the place. I was proper shaking. I was filling in for somebody else. And I was like, God, that must have been horrific. But it probably wasn't that bad. It was just in my head. Actually, it was probably terrible. And so, yeah, that was the first time I'd ever touched a Technics. It was like out there doing it. How horrific is that?
So how did you get to take you back to that record deal? And I know when we're jumping around, but because we were talking about the cut and paste thing, the sampling thing, going to college, getting, you know, feeling like confident. How did you produce music at this stage to get this record deal? What were you using?
I was lucky. I was wanting to make music and I was already dabbling bits in studios, but not hands-on. I was kind of taking records down and getting other people to sort of sample them for me and loop them up, and I was having to explain. It was very frustrating. And then I met a guy called Tubes. He was making music for years. He's 10 years on me. And he was like looking for a front man for the band. I didn't want to be a front man. I could rap, but I didn't want to do that. But I ended up being a front man for the band. That was just the way to get into it. And but he was fascinated, this guy, by my charisma and I guess my energy. You know, he was like, oh, he's perfect for the band. He had a vision. So we got the deal because of everything that, like, of his vision, and I learned lots from him. He was kind of like a mentor in some ways. And but I also learned like sort of how to take that and do something with it myself. So at this point, I think I got a Commodore
64 something.
Yeah, and started with a sampler in the back. This is really late on as well. And I was using Octamed, and I started learning how to punch the holes in and sequence of stuff. And once I got me first 4-track, I was aware I was doing all these ideas. And so the record label, we got this record deal with Big Life through this guy called Tubes, and we were in a band called Ultra Groove, and we managed to remix Digital Underground, and we did our own track, but Boss Skaggs' sample on it, he didn't give us the clearance, and the record label had pressed up thousands of them. So we were dropped by Big Life, and I think he was fired or something crazy went on. And so, yeah, it was very short-lived. But then, you know, we also had the Ashbrook All-Stars out at the same time, which went in like number 16 in the dance charts, which was insane. So, but Tubes had really put that song together, and I just went out in front of it, like, with the Ashbrook All-Stars, which was also another band from Ashbrook and Sunderland called ASK, who then went on to be Opus 3. Wow. So it was like it was a crazy time. This is all in like, what year was this? 1990. Yeah. So then
DJ wise, you said you got that first turntable around that deal time. When did you get, like, what? How long was it till you got a setup and you could really start to kind of develop?
I bought a mixer, a Gemini mixer. It was quite a good one that Cash Money used to use. I bought that second hand off my friend. I remember I met him at C&A on Saturday. Bought it off him for 20 quid.
Mate, we're dropping Woolworths, we're dropping C&A. This is my kid. I'm loving it.
All the shops that have gone, yeah. And I think then we got another record deal, and then I got another turntable. And then I wanted my own pair at home, so I could work. So Tubes bought some more, and then we sort of split them. Do you know what I mean? But my original turntables got stolen. I was devastated after a party, and so I ended up having to buy the black ones because the original ones were silver, and I absolutely.
That's like the 1200s, yeah, the 1200s.
That was the dream. The ones I wanted, I was devastated.
Because they're seen as the more like hip hop ones, aren't they? The silver ones on their side is like the hip hop setup, and the 1210s like on like sort of that way is the more house.
The house,
I don't know why that. It must just be who used the 1200s and who used the 1210s, but because they're basically the same, right?
Yeah. They are exactly the same. Yeah. I mean, they keep modifying them and putting gold switches on here, but it's the same thing.
We were talking about it on a recent podcast. I think it was with the previous one was Dr. Feelgood, who was like a Cafe Mambo resident, and he had it in the background. I've got mine over there, and we were just saying like it's insane how they haven't changed. Like I'm sure Technics will tell you that the Mark 5s or whatever are better, but they're the same. They're just the same thing. Yeah. But it's amazing how they don't break as well. Really, like
you can drop them from a high height and they'd survive.
I'm not going to try.
But yeah, it's just a beautiful thing. I mean, I know loads of people who've got them who are not DJs. They just want one because they're like an Aston Martin of decks.
Well, I've got a small vinyl collection. I used to own a record shop, but like DJ wise, I technically hadn't DJ'd on vinyl for a really long time because it's impractical for me to carry stuff. It's, there's new stuff coming out, all, for many reasons, which you can agree with or disagree with, but I left vinyl behind a long time ago. What's really brought back my 1210s to life and what I'm in love with as well is my setup. So I have my setup and I have vinyl, which I occasionally listen to through my needles. But what's really I've loved is the DVS stuff, so that I can have my laptop on, but I can control what's on my my digital music through my turntables, and that's really reignited my love of touching and feeling. And I've just got the phase. Have you seen the phase thing where you just put this little USB?
Needle,
so you don't even need like a vinyl, a bit of vinyl. The needle's not even on the record. It's just.
Well, it's interesting because this kind of goes back to what I said about like sort of fads of like, different formats. And that in my mind was another format because I got Traktor. I was teaching with Mark Lowry on a course where, yeah. So I was teaching kids how to DJ and produce. And one of the things I was teaching, part of it was Traktor because all the kids were really interested in it. And I had the Traktor vinyls. So I ended up thinking, well, I've got it. And I was doing gigs with Turrell at the time where I was DJing and he was singing, and I used to have to take CDs along and ask them to set up CDJs just so we can play our backing tracks, because what we used to do was not just play our backing tracks, we used to play like lots of records and then intersperse our stuff. So John would be freestyling over one instrumental, or then let's fall into one of ours. And then I just hated CDJs. I've never liked them. In fact, my car's just like the carpet is just CDs on the floor. It's just scratched to bits. But I ended up like sort of like using Traktor and buying it and installing it, but I found the setup of it such a pain in the arse. You know what I mean? It was like, if one thing wasn't quite touching right, it would just die in the middle of the set. I had loads of problems with it and I hated it. But then I had so many problems with feedback because this was the era when electronic music was coming bigger and bigger, digital platforms were coming bigger and bigger, and no one was sound checking turntables anymore. So when I turned up and they'd hired the turntables, especially for me, it was just like, oh, this is a nightmare. I remember one gig where John had to hold each turntable while I was mixing. It was just a joke. It was literally a joke, And there was a couple of times at festivals. There was one great one where I discovered the plastic pint cups. If you turn it upside down and squash it, so it's just like and you put like 4 of them under each feet. It was the perfect balance. Or orange cartons. I've done that before in a club.
I found it really weird. The first time I remember playing in digital, I was playing upstairs, and they had this huge coffin with like 4 1210s at the front and then 4 CDJs. And I was playing off a mix, which just sounds hilarious. I was playing off a mix of vinyl and CDs because it was that period when things were changing. Yeah. But it was the first time I'd ever played there. And I think it was probably the first time I'd ever played in like a big proper club. I'd played out on 1210s before in bars, but they tend to just be sat on the DJ booth. But I have this really vivid memory of the turntable's been on like squash balls. I think they were on 4 squash balls. And so they moved up and down as you were queuing the record. And I found it like it bent my fucking brain. Do you know what I mean? Because I'd gone in, hadn't, you know, so I'm not sound checking, I'm not a big deal. So I put the first record on and I was like, why is the fucking deck moving? This is fucking
it was kind of all right if you're an electronic dance DJ, because, you know, there's not that much action going on. But when you're a scratch DJ, you're fucked. Literally. You know, it's like, what is this? I mean, I remember one club, I think it was in Manchester. I vaguely remember. I was Hull, actually, at a party. And it was a good idea, but it just didn't work, like, as a scratch DJ. They had them hanging from chains, like, from the ceiling. Because the floor was so bouncy.
Seen that.
It was like a love swing, you know? Chasing the turntable all over. Yeah, it's crazy.
So set up. So I'm just to keep you in the DJ sort of mindset for a second. You've got your own setup at home. What's the kind of like practicing that you did? How did you get so technically proficient? Like, had it all built up from this trying to scratch on your dad's turntable? Like, did it take a long time? Did it come naturally? Like, how did you get to that like level of technical proficiency of which I remember of you?
I think just scratching and being obsessed, like just practicing and but not being aware of it. I was talking about this the other day. Like, I'd wake up but it wasn't about the scratching. It was about being creative, as in I wanted to make music from it. That was the thing. That was the thing that got me out of bed, was like, I've got an idea, I can put that with that. And it wasn't about mixing 2 tracks together, like for a mixtape. I wasn't really interested in that. In fact, the only mixtapes I did was when my friends really came around with a blank tape and sat with us and went, do us one now. You know, that was the only way to get one. And I bet they were horrendous, them tapes, you know what I mean? But, it was like, yeah. So the story is, like, I would get up out of bed in me duds, and my dad would bring us a cup of tea, and I'd be mixing and chopping bits and writing loads of stuff down everywhere. Like, and then it was pitch black. It was like nighttime, and I'd been there all day, and there was a cold cup of coffee still there and a sandwich still at the door freezing cold. And I'd be like, wow, like that I've just lost like so many days in my life, like, because I was just obsessed. So I guess that's how it happened. You know what I mean? That's
where did you, like, as you've gone through this journey, like, how did you see yourself? Did you see yourself as a DJ? Did you see yourself as a performer? Did you see yourself as a producer? Did you see yourself as a creative? Like, how have you've obviously morphed through a lot of different things over your life. How were you thinking about certain things as you were moving through? Do you remember?
I never, ever wanted to be a DJ. Never. Right. Even when I was a DJ, I didn't want to be a DJ. That's not to say I didn't enjoy it. I did. Absolutely. And also it was great to be able to make money from it. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't have to go to a 9 to 5. I had enough work. I hated residencies, though. Absolutely. Still to this day, I can't stand residencies. I love the exotic thing of getting in a taxi at 4 a.m. and then arriving in another country by about 12 midday. And it was just like, right, here's the stage, here's the club. The unknown, do you know what I mean? It might be crap, but that was my life for like 15, 20 years, like pretty much every weekend, you know, and that was amazing. But it took a long time to get to that point, you know what I mean? I had all the residencies where I dragged my record box without wheels, right, down Westgate Hill to play at Poonana, Stone Love, all the usual haunts in Newcastle, like that most of them have gone now. And I did my time. That was my apprentice, really, you know, and everyone saw me, oh, there's Smoove again, do you know what I mean? But I think the thing was I played eclectic. I was known as a hip hop scratch DJ, and but I was more than that, you know what I mean? It never annoyed me, you know, it's nice to have some identity. But I think the thing I was famous for was the backroom rock shots. That was it, really, where I used to play the funk, and mainly known for that excellent time in hip hop. But I was always into like Detroit house music, like from the early days, and you know, like I said, the boogie, the electro, loads of jazz I've got, which I never got a chance to play. The chilled out stuff, the more soulful stuff. That was sometimes my favorite part in the bar, was when there was hardly anyone in, and you were just starting to say, "Oh, this is it. This is the best bit." Do you know what I mean? And then someone would get up and dance, and go, "No," because if you dance, right, then I'm gonna have to play more upbeat music. I want to play this. So
it's interesting. It's interesting because you talk about the residencies thing, and like I've been lucky enough to be a resident digital for a very long time, and I've also been lucky enough to do a bit of touring. And it's interesting because totally agree with you. Like the idea of getting on a plane, getting on a train, turning up somewhere, the adventure, meeting people, seeing places is amazing, and I love it. But interestingly, my favorite bit of my residency, like, would be, and I used to play all night on a Saturday from like 10 till 3:30, 4:45. My favorite bits would always be like the first hour and a half, and almost like the last hour. So it's like first hour and a half when people are just coming in and you don't feel that dance floor pressure. You just like, you're kind of working through some new records, listening to some old stuff, basically almost playing for yourself, really. And then like you hit that middle bit where you've almost got to fulfill certain things and tick certain boxes and like play the records people want to hear at that moment in time. And then the promoter might be there or the owner might be there. But then I love that last hour where everyone's like, the owner's fucked off, the promoter's paid you and he's gone.
No
like,
pressure, yeah.
And you've lost the sort of like the, whatever, the weekend party kids who've just come out and they've left. And you're just left with the kind of like the hardcore on the dance floor. And you just you let loose, man. You let it go because you just like start dropping in this weird old thing and then you play something you've just done because you want to test it out and like, your booth's a bit emptier, and it's like they're the times I really loved.
I think for me, the art of DJing, and this is so like never really spoke about, is the art of packing. Because back then, you could take 2 boxes if you want, but if you were flying, it was always a risk. You'd take them with you or whatever. But even if it was a residency, you only carry so many. So it was that thing of, right, I need them bombs. I need to know I've got that if I fall. I need the new stuff in that it keeps me alive, and I'm going to hold some back. You might even play it twice, you know what I mean? And then and then I've got this bit in the middle that like is kind of like, who knows where this is going to go. But it's like, once you've done that, even if you've had a few beers, fine well that you're safe because that is telling you what to play. You don't even have to think. There's loads of times I used to DJ where my hands used to pull the records out on like autopilot. I'd be like watching my hands and watching the mix, and it was like, whoa, it was amazing feeling that, like, it's so natural, But I guess that isn't really practicing. That's just doing it. People have always asked me what makes a good DJ. It's like, you can practice it till you're blue in the face in the house. You ain't never going to learn how to be a good DJ. You've got to literally just get out there and have nervous hands with that needle, you know what I mean? Crack on, or the more that you do. Because then you'll understand music. And to be honest, to answer your question of ages ago, I wanted to be a producer, like not as in like a Dr. Dre producer. I wanted to make music from sampling. That was ultimately all I ever wanted to do. And I'm lucky that I fell into so many different holes, But it's basically that thing of like, you've got to be a producer if you want to be a DJ. If you want to be a DJ, you've got to be a producer. Blah blah blah. They both feed off each other. And I still know loads of people who dabble in production, and it helps them. But I hardly know anybody who's just a DJ. It's such a rare thing, who makes a really good living from it anyway.
Yeah, it's especially now. I mean, like I know you're very aware of this world, but in my world of like of house music, you could be. I mean, I always use Youssef as an example. Like there was a time 20 years ago when you could break through on the quality of your DJing. Do you know what I mean? And whether that was based on the residency of a nightclub, obviously Youssef came through Cream in Liverpool, and he didn't make, at that time he didn't release records, and he became an international touring DJ. Now, I would go as far as to say it is almost impossible to become an international touring DJ without releasing records. I mean, I'm sure there's some example of a fucking Gok Wan or something, although he's just fucking released a record.
Manufactured. Yeah.
I'm sure there's like a reality star who can earn money as a DJ, but like if you're trying to be taken seriously and as a credible DJ, I don't think there's a way to break onto the international touring circuit now without releasing records.
Nah, absolutely. I've always said that anyway. Who knows what the future is, but I think the world that we're from, it's like, it's still alive, very much so. I mean, everything's going around in circles, which is great. But I mean, like the disco edits, it's like, how long's that been around? Absolutely years, but it seems to be right at its peak now. I mean, all the charts is just that, you know what I mean? It's just boom, boom, right up there. And some of them are a bit like, oh God, I've heard this before, done again. But sometimes some of them are really good. Like every genre of music, like there's going to be lots of shit. You know what I mean? There is.
But I do love, as a DJ, I do love that because, for example, we all know the obvious ones like, Robin S. Show Me Love or whatever. And there'll be literally 1,000 edits of that now. And yeah, you can cut out 60%, 70% of them of being dog shit. But what I do love as a DJ now is I can almost find the perfect edit for each set, whether that set be a peak time thing, a warm-up thing, a sunset thing, an after-hours thing, a lounge bar. Like I can go and find the edit of almost any record in the world that I want. If I spend enough time on SoundCloud or wherever, I can find the perfect edit for the perfect set.
That, I mean, it's sort of being in here, surrounded by all these records. It's unbelievable when I do the radio show. It's such a joy to be able to go, I mean, then there's finding it is a problem. But or not even have an idea. I can just like put a record on and it's halfway through the show and just start wandering through the show. Oh, that one and then it's great to be able to have them all there. I mean, obviously you do that with your computer, but you've got to think. You've got to think, what am I going to play next? All that. Whereas going through the racks, you know what I mean?
I think it's why I think with my digital collection, I spend so much time playlisting with it, because I don't have the ability like I used to do, like you have, to just look at a wall of music. Do you know what I mean? And take inspiration. And there's no way that you can just look at a full iTunes library and browse through it. It's horrible. It's, you know, I mean, like whatever, I've got ADHD or whatever, or I can't cope with it. So I have to playlist music so aggressively. Like, you know, every like week I'll go through the music that I've got and put it into loads of different playlists, so that when I come to do a set or make a mix or whatever, I can go through those playlists and browse that.
I mean, you know, there is the other side as well. You know, it's not just about always vinyl. Like, there's the YouTube rabbit hole. Do you know what I mean? That's amazing. You know, someone posts something on Facebook, and the next thing you're an hour and a half in, you're like, "Whoa, what just happened there?"
Well, I've just started.
How did that get here?
I'll send you it over. I've just started a new idea, which with my mate Dan, who's a comedian, and we've called it like "Show Me the Sample." And the idea is just is to visualize that rabbit warren that you go on, and it's like, this is the record that you know. Do you know what I mean? When I say you, I mean like more general public people. Yeah. But did you know that this comes from this, and this? Did you know that this, and this is linked to that, and that? And did you know that the guy who produced this also produced that and toured with? And like, it's amazing.
Well, it all comes down to one person, doesn't it, really?
Who's that?
Doctor Who.
Right, so let's go from the, I mean, you've obviously always been making music. You were DJing, you were touring. When did the Smoove Turrell project come alive? For anyone that doesn't know, and I'm sure you've told this story before, but this is a different, you know, audience potentially than, you know, because of the podcast that this is. Tell the story of how that came about and why it was created and what's gone on to happen with it.
At the time I was signed with Acid Jazz, this was about 2007. I'd been with them already 7 years, and released like a few albums and lots of singles. And before I got signed to Acid Jazz, I had a lull in music, and I was like not really being that productive. And I did a sculpture course. I did a degree in sculpture. So I met this girl called Nicola, who I was friends with, and my missus met her through some other mutual friends. So we used to meet up with us sometimes for coffee, go around the house and whatnot. And then one day Nicola said to me, "Oh, my fella's a singer. He wants to record some stuff. Have you got the facilities like to do that?" I says, yeah, I can do that. She says, "Oh, he's in a like duo. How much would it cost? Blah, blah, blah." He came around my house, and when they turned up, I was just like looking at them going, "Oh, who are these?" And he had like a lump of dope and like, you know, about 20 cans of lager. I was just like, "Oh God, who are these?" And anyway, we got their stuff down within like a week in all, and we recorded like a full album, and they were called the Stevies. And I loved John's voice, but what I liked more about John was how he didn't sort of mess around. He didn't, "Oh, I'm not sure about that." He just did it, because he had this certain like naive about writing, because he'd been working with Alan in the garage, like playing every Friday night and getting pissed and just making music. And his theory was, if I don't remember it, then it wasn't good enough. You know, they weren't even recording any of it. It was like wasted. But that's how he learned his craft, really, of like, he'd been singing from an early age anyway, but it was that thing of like, he just could just write as the music was coming at him. He could just write it down or even just make it up. So I loved that, like, that he was just really quick. And I was like, oh, and obviously he had an amazing voice. And I went like, oh, so we finished our thing, and I went, "Do you want to sing on one of mine?" And I'd wrote this thing called "I Can't Give You Up," and I'd only wrote like this rough chorus, and it was just this loop, and this Mike Porter was already playing on it, because Mike was already on my music from years before. So basically John sang this song and made up the second verse off the spot after singing the chorus, and it was like, wow. So we got 2 or 3 songs together, and before we knew it, all the leftovers that I had hanging around, and we wrote little bits, it was pretty much an album was done. And then I just sent it off, and it got signed within an hour. It was just like insane. It was crazy. So yeah, that's kind of how we met. But weirdly, Mike Porter, who's our keyboard player, he was, as I said, he was like living. Alan lived next door to Mike, so where they were rehearsing, him and John, Mike could hear this voice through the garage wall every weekend, every Friday. Like, who is that? He never ever saw him. So when they finally met and he heard him sing, he goes, "Oh my God, it's you!" So it was like, I think we would have met anyway at some point. You know what I mean? I think our worlds were meant to meet. So it was a great thing because obviously, like, John was in the middle of trying to get a record deal in France, and all that went to shit. But I was actually helping him to get the deal and sort of guiding him how to do a MySpace and all that kind of crap. That's how long ago it was. And then, he slowly drifted towards doing what I was doing. And he did some more stuff. He's not only ever just worked with me, he's worked with some other French producers. He's worked with Ashley Beale, loads and loads of people. Yeah. So he loves, like, and he still does. He still works with loads of different people. So it's great, like, just to, rather than just do one thing. But he's totally loyal now to what Smoove Turrell is, because he knows where his bread is buttered, basically. And, we're a family now, and it's gone on like 10 years now. You know what I mean? I've seen him lose his hair. You know what I mean? It's been that long.
Well, I want to touch on something that you mentioned before, because again, I was aware that you were doing this with Mark for Generator, as sort of you were talking about. You were teaching DJing, and I guess was Mark teaching the production side of things at the time?
Yeah, Mark sort of got me involved more for the DJing, and that's correct. He was doing the production, but he was already aware of that I was making music. So I remember that he used to DJ Poo and R, but I think he was just there having a drink one night, and I was actually on the decks, and he come torpedoed over the decks, like right under my face. What the fuck is this? And I was like, oh, it's one of mine. Like, I'm still mixing it. I was playing it off mini disc. And he went, oh my God, I need to get a copy of this. And that was actually on my first debut album, Dead Men Church. The song was called The Man with Two Watches. It's an instrumental song with loads of string samples. And he was just like, oh my God. And from that day, really, Mark just fell in love because we had the same taste. You know what I mean? Fell in love with music, not me. But I think he liked my sort of approach because he was quite nerdy. And he's a lush kid, Mark, but he gets rubbed up the wrong way really easy by people. But to the point now he doesn't even make music. It's really sad. But he was a great teacher, but sometimes he would go too far into it. And I was kind of like brought in really to sort of like, just to keep things simple, because I'm not nerdy. You know what I mean? Far from it. I hate technology, but I'm great at getting things done in a kind of slapdash kind of way. Do you know what I mean? So it was a great team, I suppose, that he was like, the brains, and I was the sort of the hands of it.
Well, what I wanted to ask you, because I don't think it's anything that I've ever asked anyone on this series before, was what was your approach to teaching someone to DJ? Do you know what I mean? Because there might be someone listening to this who's never DJed but thinks they'd love to do it. So A, little bit of advice, but B, what was your thought process when someone said to you, whether it be Mark or whoever, and said, I want you to teach these kids, what you do and how you do it. What was your approach to it? What was your mindset towards teaching people to DJ?
It was tough because sometimes we would go into it would be like a social club or something, and they were all like totally disadvantaged kids, like no mums and dads, like broken homes, like really sort of low life. It was bad, and their attention was so difficult. So in those situations, I used to have to just show off very, very shortly, just do some mad scratching and human beatbox and rap, and they would just go, and they'd be like. Because at first they'd just be laughing at you, you know what I mean? Oh, look at that daft git, man! Look at him, man! Proper spiky knob, and I'd be like, oh, this is awful. But then you just flip them, and then I'd say like, right, who wants to have a try at this scratch? And they'd all go, and I'd say, I'll give someone a pund, and everyone run to the front, and it was like, so there's this weird way of, it wasn't planned, it was just like natural that you could just involve them, and then they just liked you, they warmed to you, and then they'd want to use the decks. You know what I mean? It was getting past that wall of like them letting their guard down. That's what it was. That's what they fear most. Like these disadvantaged kids, they've got like, the worst thing that can happen to them is their friends laughing at them. That's the worst thing. You know what I mean? It's like, Jesus. But the other side of it was, even if there's someone like luckily we ended up doing the course where kids signed up, so they wanted to be learned. So it was kind of a different sort of challenge. But even still, you'd have the drop off, like where they would go like, just going cross-eyed, going, "No, I don't know what he's talking about." So it was trying to engage them where they could, because everyone's at different levels. And I used to always try and say, look, like, doesn't matter what level you're off, I'm going to have a one-to-one with you at some point, and I'm going to assess you and get you up to script, like the speed, like, and see what the problems are, or see what your advantages already are. You know what I mean? So it was just that was it, really.
I think you raised such an interesting point, because I'm definitely old enough now to not give a fuck what my friends think about me. And you look back to school and you realize that those kids that you thought were maybe weird, who didn't give a fuck what anyone thought, they're now the interesting fucking people who you want to like hang out with and speak to. And it's like, the sooner that you know, any advice I could give to anyone listening out there who's worried about what the mates might think if they post a video of them DJing, or if they start to produce music or whatever, is fuck that. Like, the sooner you realize that it doesn't matter what your mates think, and someone sent me a track the other day and I listened to it, I was like, this is wicked, and they were like, oh, I'm worried that like some of my pals won't like it. I was like, fuck your pals, mate. Do you know what I mean? Like, make fucking music that you love and put it out there.
Well, it's kind of, well, there's two things to that. One is, it's like that nerds are cool. In this day and age, nerds are cool. Skateboarders are super cool now, not just because they can skateboard. They're generally very interesting people. People into heavy metal are the most intelligent people you'll ever meet. Do you know what I mean? It's like, but you look at them, they're like with the grungy hair, and they're just like down at the back of the room, or goths or anything like that. They are super. Like, I learned this from like Ozzy, who plays now a band. He's super intelligent. His brother's such a nerd. He's an amazing guitarist. They're proper geeks, and they openly admit it. You know what I mean? But there's something about, I think it's the fear of the unknown. You don't like gigs because you've never spoke to one. But then when you do, you go like, God, they're super intelligent. That's why people are inferior of them. The other thing is, going back to the thing of like, you know, you saying what you're scared of. I remember doing a course with Mark, and there was a kid on the course, lovely kid, and he was sitting like 3 seats back every session. And I'd be like trying to engage everybody and show them like structuring and stuff like that. And this like one lad piped up and went, "Oh, I've got some stuff, but I haven't finished anything." And I went, "Right. Well, I've just showed you some stuff there. So can you take that away in mind and bring your stuff in next week, and we'll have a listen to it?" He went, yeah. So he brought it in, and me and Mark listened to it, and we looked at each other and went, "That's fucking amazing. Your structure's shit, but that's fucking amazing." He says, "Oh, it needs something else." I says, "No, mate, there's enough in there. All you got to do is deconstruct it, and then you've got enough stuff. You're bringing stuff in and out." And he was like, "All right. And it just sees eyes, just like this, a light bulb went in his head. He was like, right. He went away and he came back with 3 finished songs. And then the next session he came back with 6 finished songs, and he just kept coming. And that's Solly, who's like massive now. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he's just remixed one of ours. But he always thanks me. I mean, I didn't do anything. I just pointed him in the direction. That's all I did. He already had it. But it's just lovely to see that, like, sometimes just, it's not even mentoring, just going like that over there. That's head that way. Do you know what I mean? It was great. Like, it was so satisfying.
Yeah, he did a gig for me like pre-lockdown at the start of this, either the start of this year or the back end of last year. He's such a great lad. I've been bugging him for ages to get on here, but he keeps swerving us like. But I'll keep prodding him. I'll
get him on.
So what's the, you know, before we start to wrap it up, like, I mean, obviously I could talk to you about 100 different things for hours and hours and hours, but to before we start to wrap it up, like, what are your plans going forward into next year? Are you looking to tour the album that you released in June? Are you currently writing a new album? Have you got other projects going on? Like, what's in your head at the moment? Like, what you're looking into next year with?
Well, obviously the burning thing is, like, you know, we did move everything till next year, the tour, but that's realistically not going to happen. I mean, the government do this stupid thing where they go, "Hey, here's a vaccine, and it's not even fucking ready. You know, I mean, no, it's not going to be rolled out to everybody. It's not. It's going to be really painstakingly slowed, like, rolled out, and like it's going to be another year of this. I'm telling you now, and it's just like, that's how it is. But I'm still booking stuff in. I'm still being positive. But then if you don't get them, you don't get them. But you have to get them in, otherwise everyone else is fighting over the dates. So we've got that. That's that. We are writing new music. We've already wrote 2 new songs that are virtually done. That's going to go for the next album. That'll probably take us a good 12 months at least to write. So that'll probably come out 2022. I'm actually booking stuff for 2022 and 2023 already, wow, which is insane. And we like I do a lot of remixes, so I've got all of that going on as well. I've got a couple of labels I run, one of them being Whack Records. So I've done some. I did a mix for Six Music, and the idea was to sort of get stems and remix these tracks, and then mix all of these tracks into a mix. So it was like remix. So it was like you couldn't get any of the stuff; it was all exclusive. And I got such a good reaction. I thought, you know what, I should actually chop and like tidy these up and make them into an actual release. So I've done those in lockdown, and they're all going to come out as well. Like there's loads of them, but they're not coming out on Whack Records. Actually, I'm doing them on Friday's Funky 45s and Resense, a label in Germany as well. So yeah, there's lots more stuff. Like I said, I'm still being really productive. We still continue to do the radio show, the Northern Call Experience. That goes out. Now we're in the Face Radio in Brooklyn. We're in Method in Newcastle, 1BTN in Brighton, and Totally Wired in London, and soon Soho Radio as well. So yeah, that's keeping our beans frying.
Amazing, man. That sounds wicked. Right, I'm going to hit you with some before we've got like sort of a 3-phased podcast wrap up. So I'm going to hit you with some quick fire questions. Doesn't have to be an answer, but we're just trying to get some answers. So the first one is favorite city you've been to. It might have been for a gig, it might have been just because you went traveling, but favorite city you've been to, just something that you can tell people about.
Oh, that's really difficult because I've been so far. I'd have to just give you the answer of Germany as a city because it's a great place. There's too many great places in Germany. I love Germany.
Cool. Yeah. I want to hit you with first nightclub you can remember going to. You may have snuck in, but first nightclub you can remember going to.
Oh, that's hard. Oh, I mean, I went to under 18s nightclub. I found a video the other day online. I couldn't believe it was like someone had videoed it, and it was Tops and Teens. It was called in Sunderland. Then it became a gym. I think it's gone now. But it was in the car park where the Blue Monkey used to be, opposite there. So yeah, that was the first experience of nightclub when I was about 14.
Is there a track that you would say has influenced you the most throughout your career?
Oh my God, yeah. If I have to put it down, I'd probably say Mars. Pump Up the Volume, just because of the cut and paste, the dance element, the scratching, everything, the snippets of sound bites and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, I love that.
Favorite? I'm going to say club, but if you want to move it to a festival or whatever, like I'm going to keep you to DJ here, so it's not a live band thing. As a DJ, favorite sort of venue, whether it be a club or a festival that you've played that you'd love to relive that moment.
Oh, I mean, we talk about this all the time. It's probably got to be. We got offered to play the Big Chill Festival, which is long gone now. And when we turned up, we only had 1 hour to play. I think it was 1 hour. And it was like a DJ thing that was kind of like a van, like an open van, and like an ice cream van, like a big ice cream van. But there was no stage. It was just a massive empty field. So we started and there was nobody there. And then by about like 15, 20 minutes in, it was just like a sea of people. It was unbelievable. And I remembered like, looking at John going, we've arrived. This is it. This is where we take off. And it was, we just got so many bookings off the back of that, like loads of people, like, so probably the Big Chill. Yeah.
Nice one. A DJ that you would, dead or alive, doesn't have to be like tomorrow. It can be at any point, but like someone you'd love to warm up for. So like, you might get a booking email through or whatever, and it just says, you know what I mean? You're on and you're warming up for this DJ, and you just think, oh, that's just perfect. I'm going to be able to play exactly what I want to be able to play. And then as soon as I unplug my headphones, I'm going to have a mint night because I'm either going to be in the booth watching them or I'm going to be on the floor dancing. Who's a DJ that you would just love to warm up for? You may have already done it, but...
Yeah, I have. I mean, there's two really. I mean, I did Cash Money, and that was fantastic because he was an absolute hero, and I love the way he scratches. Like if you hear Cash Money scratch, you know it's him instantly. He's got his own style, so that was amazing. The other one was Andy Smith, known from Portishead, and also did the document mixes. He's such a lovely guy. He's a good friend of mine. But I remember when I first warmed up for him. He came up and he was buying his drinks and he was like listening to my set. He wasn't just sitting in the other room, and he was like, oh, this is a great song. What's it? Oh, I can't believe you played this. And it was like, we really engaged, like we hit something. And then obviously I was totally blown away by his set, and we've worked together for years since then. But yeah, it has to be Andy Smith.
Cool. I don't quite know how to phrase this for you because the way it's phrased to different people makes more sense to them. So I'm going to have a go at phrasing it. And if it's not quite right, just roll with it. So you picked out like rock shots, didn't you? Like you did that room and you were, really well known for it at the time. So I'm going to try and phrase it. If for some reason there was a rock shots reunion, but it was actually good and you wanted to do it, and it was like this one chance to relive that kind of night. Do you know what I mean? With those kind of people. My question is what would be the last record that you would play? Do you know what I mean? So I'm trying to get you to sort of feel the vibe of being somewhere that you felt comfortable and that you know what I mean? You had a history with and a legacy with, and you were trying to almost define it by that last record. The way I play it out to a lot of house DJs is the Carl Cox like last record at Space kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? So I'm trying to put it into like a terminology that might resonate with you. So it's just like a last record that you would play somewhere, potentially if, like back in March and you were doing a gig and it was locked down and you knew you might not be able to DJ out for 9 months again. Just something that might be emotive as like a last record that you would really like to resonate with people.
I think one that I often use without sounding too cheesy, it's just being honest. It's just such a party pleaser, and everyone knows it's time to go home. Do you know what I mean? It's Candy Staton. Sometimes I feel like I put my hands in the air. It's just what a tune. Obviously, the amazing thing about that song is she performs the bootleg version now live.
Yeah. Well, I think we're going to do it on Show Me the Sample because it's such an interesting story, that record, of how it came about and sourced the original bootleg and then the Frankie Knuckles part in it. And do you know what I mean? It's I love it. It's such an interesting story.
There's what's her name again? She's just done a version of it. Not just, it was a few years ago now.
Florence and the Machine.
She's massive. Yeah, I hate that version. It's awful. But like the other thing is, if you do play the Frankie Knuckles original, you can see the death on people's faces. Like, what's this?
Yeah. Where's the fucking vocal?
I love doing that.
Right. So the last thing I'm going to get you to do is curate sort of like a dream gig. Do you know what I mean? So it's your gig, you're curating it. It can be anywhere you want. It can be in an actual venue that it can be a generic like festival or, it can be a club. It can be whatever you want it to be. And you're going to put 3 acts on there. You can DJ, you can be Smoove Turrell, you can do whatever you want. You can just curate it and not be on it. But I want 3 acts. There's not so much a warm up, a middle, and an end. There's more just like 3 core, build acts. But ultimately it's your fucking gig, Smooove, so you can do what the fuck you want. I just want you to curate it. It's in the moment right now, just something you would like to curate. So Smooove, where's it going to be?
Well, obviously they've got to be alive, right?
They don't have to be. No, dead or alive. It's a dream gig, man. You can do what you
want.
All right.
Well, obviously, then I'd have James Brown.
But where's it going to be? Where's it going to be? Where are you going to have it?
Where's it going to be? Well, it'll have to be in Newcastle, wouldn't it? Really, it would be the hottest day that's ever happened in Newcastle.
About 19 degrees.
It'd be in a massive field, with a huge stage and the best sound system ever.
Amazing.
Ever made.
Down with that.
Yeah,
so
and
having James Brown.
And there's free beer for everyone.
Amazing.
And millions and millions of toilets, and no one has to queue. Everyone's got their own toilet.
I love this. Yeah.
And then you've got probably Ray Charles straight after James Brown.
Nice.
And then I suppose I'd have to have Smoove Turrell headlining it, wouldn't I?
I love that. James Brown, Ray Charles, Smoove Turrell. Right, thank you so much. If people want to find out more about you, if they want to find out more about the record labels that you run, if they want to find out more about Smoove Turrell, if they want to find out more about the radio show, anything else where, hit us with some links, hit us with some things people should Google. What's the name of the album? Where can they find it? Anything you want to talk about and promote, get it out there now.
Pretty much everything that we've mentioned, apart from my childhood, is on smooveandturrell.com, which is our main website. It's a very, very nice website. Websites don't really get used anymore, you know what I mean? But you've got to have one. And when people do go on our website, they're like, oh my God, it's amazing.
I was on it this morning, yeah, it's good.
Because we've got his guy, Tom, I think he's called. He's just like amazing, who does our... web design, yeah. But obviously we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're all that rubbish, you know what I mean? It's not hard to find us unless you can't spell our name, which is the other problem. It's Smoove with a V-E and Turrell, R-E-L-L. So There you go.
Yeah, my dyslexia kicks in there awfully, like when I'm trying to get stuff like that. But mate, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for taking the time to speak to me. I could have honestly spoke to you for hours about varying aspects and, you know, of your life and of your careers, but it's been so interesting. You've said so much stuff that's given me, you know, things to think about. I'll re-listen to this. It's been great. What I want you to do is give me a track to play out the podcast. People have been listening to us have a chat. I'm sure they're going to go and find out more about you. It can be something you've mentioned. It can be something new, something old. It can be, you know, Smoove Turrell Reese. It can be something you heard yesterday. It can be something, anything you want. Just name the track, tell people why they should listen to it, and then that's what we're going to play out with.
I'm going to pick, simply because we did a live broadcast the other day and it was so good, the live version. It's probably my favourite song from the album, from the new album. But I'm going to pick, because it's got a bit of sampling in it as well. And it's got a bit of house music. It's got a bit of everything in that we do, soul. It's just a beautiful piece of music. And it's from our new album, Stratos Blur. And this one's called It's You.
Thank you, man. Thank you so much for your time. Speak to you again soon.
Cheers. Thanks a lot.